Check, check. All right, we'll start here in just a minute. We still got almost 2 minutes before we start. But anyway, it's good to see you guys this morning. I hope you're doing well. Yeah, I've never been on a trip that had this many flights canceled and rescheduled. My American Airlines flight we booked originally was yesterday at 2 o'clock. And then when the storm was coming, I rescheduled us through Austin early to go to Austin to Dallas. But then they canceled the Austin to Dallas route. It put us on a flight from LaGuardia to Dallas. But we were at a hotel at JFK. And so I called them back and I go, well, what flight can we take? And so they put me back on the original flight, the 2 p.m. flight, which I need to ask them because I paid $300, $150 each to get us on the Austin flight, and then they canceled it. So I need to call them and go, can I get my money back for that? Because we never got on that plane. Y'all canceled it out and we wound up ultimately back on the original one we bought. So I may call them and see if I can get some money back for that. But then they sent Kim's suitcase to Phoenix, which is funny to us. I mean, it's like, oh, come on. I don't think we even know anyone in Phoenix. Anyway, all right. Well, all right, we good? We're on. It's good to see you guys this morning, on this warm morning. I was glad to get out of New York yesterday. I was like, man, it's cold up here. I got to get back to the warmth of Texas. Yeah, that was good. I mean, it was like in the low 30s, upper 20s in New York. It's like, man, we got to get out of here. It's cold. And then landed, it was 20 degrees. Yeah, so that didn't work out at all. The perception of get warm, go to Texas did not work out this time. I think New York's about to get hit, though. I think theirs was coming, so I think it was about to get cold. This same storm is kind of moving their direction. So, yeah, but it's good to see you guys. It looks like we're going to be kind of socked in with this for a day or two. Not bad like, 2021, where we went 5 full days without electricity. And we had a gas fireplace, so we were okay. But, yeah, it was cold. Remember that? Man, that was brutal cold. So, yeah, it's good to see you guys. Kim and I were in Israel for the last couple of weeks, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that in the sermon. So for those who are already here, talk a little bit about it. Anyway, I went for an hour and 15 minutes. I apologize. I'll try to do better in the second service. But we have the challenge, and that normally we would have music during the service, but with the travel and some health issues of some of the music people and stuff like that, there was not really a way to get music today. So I was like, all right, I'm landing in New York, getting on the plane in New York, discovering this, kind of going, okay, what do I do now? Maybe I might have been on the plane, and I was like, all right, you know what? I'll just figure out a way to talk for an hour. And it turned out the problem was stopping. Not starting, but stopping, yeah. So like I said, I feel like a bad 1970s neighbor with the slideshow going to show you their vacation pictures. And it's like, come over and see our vacation pictures. Like, I think we're doing something. I think I'm getting a root canal or something more fun than that. But yeah, so... anyway, so sorry about the vacation picture aspect of it, but I do think hopefully you're able to see a few of those things and feel the situation a little bit. So yeah, the thing that intrigued me most was learning more about, well, not maybe most, but that was pretty intriguing, was learning about the history of the modern nation of Israel. So around the late 1800s, this guy in Europe says, we should go back to our land and we should recapture our culture, our worship, and our language. You know, no one spoke Hebrew in the late 1800s. They spoke Yiddish, which is Hebrew characters, but 80% of it's German. And someone's like, we got to recover our language. So in the 1920s, about 97 families moved from Europe to what is called Tel Aviv. Tel, which is an ancient archaeological dig site, a tell, like Megiddo. Megiddo has 26 strata, 26 civilizations destroyed and built upon. And so that's called a tell. And you can see it, driving around Israel, there's tons of them that are untouched right now archaeologically. I've heard someone say it will take 300 years at the pace they're going to uncover all that's there. So there's a lot still to discover. But the tells, you can see them. Megiddo is one of the best examples. It's 30 acres of massive tell. And so they named it Tel Aviv. There's not a tell there. Like, why do they call it that? Well, the word Aviv is spring. And the idea is ancient and new, ancient and reborn. So they made the city Tel Aviv, ancient and reborn. And so that's why I call it Tel Aviv. And these 97 families moved there. And they make the commitment, we're going to learn the Hebrew language. Now, in Hebrew, you only have consonants, no vowels. And there's a group called the Masoretes, about 1000 AD, said, we're going to lose this language if we're not careful. And so they added vowel markings to the consonants. But they did it without messing with the letters because they didn't want to mess with the original text. So all the vowel markings are below or above the consonants. So they went and put a dot under a letter or a dot over a letter or a line under a letter. But that way, the original language. So here's how committed they are to this, is that today, the language is this young. Today, when a new word enters, like internet, they'll come up with the Hebrew word for it. And for the first few months in the newspaper, it's printed with the vowel markings until everybody gets it. And then after that, they stop using the vowel markings. So they're literally learning this language over the last 60, 70, 80 years. Pretty cool stuff. At Shiloh, which if you know anything about Shiloh, that's the place where the tabernacle first went. And so that's where Eli falls off his chair and dies after he found out the Ark of the Covenant got stolen. Remember that? That's where little Samuel went. There's a really cool thing at Shiloh that we did. So the archaeologist, in fact, he dug there before and he's digging there this summer. There's a guy that thinks he's found the foundation of the tabernacle at Shiloh. And pretty intriguing stuff. And it looks kind of like he has, actually, from what we're seeing. They found thousands of bones, which would make sense with animal sacrifices there and stuff like that. So it's like, ooh, pretty intriguing. So, so you'll sometimes hear this, that pottery is the DNA of archaeology. And the way you tell how old a strata is you look at the pottery. And the pottery is like fingerprints, or it's like fashion statements. If I showed you a picture of my living room from 1975, you'd be like, orange and yellow shag carpet. I think I got it, right? Pottery's like that. It's got fashion to it. And pottery in 1800 BC is very different than pottery in 500 BC. And very different than pottery at the time of Jesus. And so you can tell where you are strata-wise how old it is by the pottery there. And I'd heard someone say pottery is ubiquitous in Israel. You cannot walk anywhere in Israel without ancient pottery shards everywhere. They're everywhere, literally everywhere. Outside a hotel, you walk outside the hotel, you kind of dig around for a second. Oh, there's pottery shard. They're everywhere. And archaeologists can look at them and go, 500 AD, 600 BC. Like they can just look at it that quickly. It's that distinctive. So at Shiloh, I'll tell you how ubiquitous it is. At Shiloh, they have what's called the pottery shard graveyard. It's as they dig and they look through it and they finally determine, it's just a random piece of pottery from 600 BC, toss it in the pile, right? And the pile is about as big as this middle section of the sanctuary and probably about this high. That's just from Shiloh. People just going, that's, just household stuff. So you're not supposed to do this. You're not supposed to take any pottery with you, but the archaeologist with this, he's like, I dug here last year. They're just going to grind this stuff up and throw it away. So he goes, you can take one small piece. But he goes, when Samuel was there. You remember when God says, Samuel? And he goes running into Eli. And he's like, did you call me, Eli? Remember, he's a little kid, right? Remember Hannah? She has a kid. She's like, Lord, if you give me a child, I'll dedicate him to you. Remember that? And she's praying so fervently. Remember what Eli thinks? What does he think about Hannah? She's been drinking. And she's like, I'm not drunk. I'm a faithful woman. And I'm praying. And he's like, oh, my bad. Well, whatever you pray, the Lord will give you. So she gets pregnant. She gets pregnant with Samuel. And so Samuel's little kid takes him to serve at Shiloh, at the tabernacle at Shiloh, which I heard tabernacle, and I assumed the tabernacle at Shiloh would be the tent. But I think what they did was build foundations for it. And basically the exact dimensions of the tabernacle, but they built foundations. And here's the biblical evidence of this is in the book of Jeremiah. Do you remember the famous Temple of the Lord sermon, Jeremiah 7? Remember that? Jeremiah comes up to the temple complex and he says, I hear you guys chanting, Hakal Yahweh, Hakal Yahweh, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord is here. It was their way of saying, nothing's ever going to happen to us. The Babylonians aren't going to destroy us. The temple's here. It was like a rabbit's foot. It was like a good luck charm. And this is what Jeremiah says, go to Shiloh and see what I did there. I found their foundations. That's a pretty striking statement. I found their foundations. Doesn't sound like a tent anymore, does it? I found their foundations. So I think they replicated the tabernacle, the portable tabernacle with actual physical walls. And so I think they found it. They'll find in the next 1 or 2 years as they dig deeper, I think they're going to identify this is it. Other archaeologists are kind of skeptical about it. But there's lots of evidence, and the reason they're skeptical is it's an American who's doing it. But I do think they're going to come back and go, yeah, this is actually Shiloh. And that would be pretty amazing stuff. But while we're there, you remember when Samuel, he's like, Samuel, he goes into Eli. He's like, did you call me? He's like, no. Goes in again, did you call me? He's like, no, kid, I'm sleeping. What are you talking about? Just having a bad dream. You ate too much pizza last night. So have to be vegetarian though, because you can't mix milk with meat if you're Jewish. If you eat milk or you eat a milk-based product, you cannot eat a meat-based product or vice versa for 5 hours is the rule or something like that. Anyway, if you're kosher. And so I did think it was funny. So we're in Israel for 2 weeks, and so we crashed the Heinz, and Steve's like, we're having pork ribs. Is that cool with you guys? I was like, I told him I converted to Judaism. I eat kosher now. I'm just kidding. It's the first pork I've had in 2 weeks. I can guarantee you that. So you go to Israel, you're not getting bacon in Israel. You're just not. So anyway, so when Samuel hears Eli says, no, it's not me, it's the Lord, right? And so when Samuel hears Samuel, he says, here I am, right? It's the same exact Hebrew phrase that Isaiah says, here am I, send me. It's this little word, it's Hanenu or something like that is the word. Hanani or something like that is the word. And so what the archaeologist did is he took a Sharpie and wrote that Hebrew word on all the pot shards for each of us to take home as a reminder of Samuel at Shiloh saying, here I am, Lord. It was really cool. So I have, Kim and I each got they're little pieces like this out of the pottery graveyard that they were going to grind up later anyway. And he's like, don't go picking it up other places. But he goes, these have already been picked through. They have a washing station there. We actually did that for an hour. We worked with went to this place where archaeologists and took buckets of debris and filtered through it. And that was kind of cool. Yeah. So most of it not worth keeping, but you'll find 1 or 2 items in each of these buckets. And so that was cool. We got to do that. That was fun. So at Shiloh, we had this, it was kind of a cool experience. We got this little piece of pottery shard and brought it back with us and that kind of thing. Let's see. Where was I going with that? So the temple's at Shiloh and it gets destroyed. Remember that? And then in the process, the Ark of the Covenant gets taken, right? And David, it gets returned because the Philistines don't like having it. Remember this? Like, it's not going well. They're like, cool, we have Dagon and we have the Ark of the Covenant. And after a day or two, they're like, this isn't going well. And after about 3 days, they're like, we got to get this thing out of here before we're all dead. Remember that? And then they put the Ark of the Covenant with 2 oxen. Remember this? 2 oxen pull. We went to the place where the 2 oxen returned the Ark and what I think is the saddest thing in the Bible, they offer the 2 oxen. This doesn't seem right to me. The 2 oxen went to all that work to do what Israel was incapable of doing and brought the Ark of the Covenant from Philistine land back to Jewish land. And how do they think? They should have retired those 2 animals You know what I'm saying? They should have been able to eat whatever they wanted every single day. Instead, they offer the two of them to the Lord. Why didn't they pick some other animal and give them like a nice pasture? I always feel bad for the animals there. But anyway, so they bring them back. And so we actually stopped. It's a random place. This is when I first discovered Potteries Everywhere, because they haven't been digging there at all. They're going to dig at this spot at some point. And you're just like, it's all over the place. One lady's looking around, she picks up the whole handle of a 7th century BC pottery jar. It's like, oh, that's a handle of a pottery jar. It's that kind of thing. It's everywhere. You can't go anywhere without. If you have a house there and you have a backyard, you got pottery in your backyard. So, but anyway, so they get the Ark of the Covenant. Remember, David wants to bring it to Jerusalem. And the first attempt, they failed. Remember that? They put it on the back of a cart. How are they supposed to bring it in? Poles carried by priests, right? But they go, we'll just throw it on the back of this cart, right? And remember the Uzzah. He already had a tough name. Too many U's in that name. Anyway, Uzzah is standing there beside it, and it starts to tip over. Remember that? And he tries to steady it, and the Lord strikes him dead because he touched the Ark of the Covenant. And David's like, ooh, never mind. Leave it at the guy's house. And so after a few years, someone's like, if we read the Bible, maybe bad things wouldn't happen. So they read the Bible and they go, maybe we should get some priests, the poles, put it through the side of the Ark of the Covenant and carry it. Because the 2 oxen that might have brought it to Jerusalem, we killed. So yeah, there's that. So David brings it, and he brings it to his house. And the palace of David has this outside chamber where it looks like that's where he put the Ark of the Covenant until Solomon built the temple. That's pretty crazy. Some of the stuff they found just in the last decade is pretty insane. So anyway, we went right by that. I've got pictures of this little chamber room that looks like it was added later to the palace. And the thought is that was a sacred room. They put the Ark of the Covenant until they get the temple built up on the hill above. So this evidence is 3,000 years old. And so anyway, so Hezekiah, though, is worried about Sennacherib. And Sennacherib's an Assyrian king, and you might remember this event. He comes and he waylays all these cities, destroys all these cities. And he comes to the Judah, and he defeats Lachish. Lachish is the second biggest city in Judah. And it's a huge tell. Yeah, I mean, it was we got to go to Lachish. One other thing's frustrating. This archaeologist keeps mispronouncing all these words, like he's using a Hebrew name and stuff, and it wrecked it because it's Lachish. I'm like, no, it's Lachish, and you're going to learn to pronounce it correctly, sir. Yeah, I'll give you another example. Beth Shemesh. It's one of my favorite cities in the Bible. Padan Aram and Beth Shemesh. They both sound really cool, right? No, it's Beth Shemesh. I'm like, dude, you're messing things up for me right now, and you need to stop. So I want to have a conversation with him about correcting his pronunciation. It's not like he graduated from a PhD from an Israeli archaeological school or something, like he knows anything. But anyway, so Lachish, I'm still calling it Lachish. He can say whatever he wants. But so we went to Lachish. It's a massive tell site, and it's right out of the scripture. And it's right out of the scripture, and it's from Isaiah. Remember, we've been studying Isaiah. They come to Lachish. Sennacherib comes to Lachish, and he destroys it. And then they're headed to Jerusalem, and they send that dude, Rabshakeh. Remember that dude, Rabshakeh, who can also speak Hebrew, which was unique. He spoke Hebrew. And remember, he comes to Jerusalem, and he starts yelling at the people on the city wall in Hebrew, like, hey, you've already seen what we've done to all these people. Don't let this Hezekiah guy, or don't let these priests tell you can rely on the Lord. None of the other deities in this area were saved their people from Sennacherib. You're not going to be saved either. Remember that whole thing? And everybody's like, remember the guys on the wall was like, speak to us in Aramaic. He's like, I am not. Everyone here speaks Hebrew, and they're going to listen to me. And so he's speaking in Hebrew, and everybody on the wall, the walls of Jerusalem are massive too, by the way, impressive. But anyway, they're all looking down like, this sounds bad. This sounds really, really bad. So they all pray, remember that? And then, I'll read it for you. not my words. We'll read it from the Bible. Then Isaiah, son of Amos, sent word to Hezekiah, saying, thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, because you have prayed to me about Sennacherib, king of Assyria, this is the word of the Lord has spoken against him. She has despised you and mocked you, the virgin daughter of Zion. She has shaken her head behind you, the daughter of Jerusalem. Whom have you reproached and blasphemed? And against whom have you raised up your voice and haughtily lifted up your eyes? Against the Holy One of Israel. Through your servants you have reproached the Lord, and you have said, with my many chariots I have come up to the heights of the mountains, to the remotest parts of Lebanon, and I cut down its tall cedars and its choice cypresses, and I will go to its highest peak, its thickest forest. I dug wells and drank waters, and with the sole of my feet I dried up all the rivers of Egypt. Have you not heard? Long ago I did it. From ancient times I planned it. Now I have brought it to pass that you should turn fortified cities into ruinous as heaps. Therefore, their inhabitants were short of strength. They were dismayed and put to shame. They are as the vegetation of the field and as the green herb, as grass on the housetops is scorched before it has grown up. But I know you're sitting down and you're going out and you're coming in and you're raging against me. Because you're raging against me and because your arrogance has come up to my ears, therefore I'll put my hook in your nose and my bridle in your lips, and I will turn you back to the way which you came. Then this shall be a sign for you. You shall eat this year what grows of itself, and in the second year what springs from the same. In the third year sow, reap, plant vineyards, and eat their fruit. The surviving remnant of the house of Judah will again take up root downward and bear fruit upward. For out of Jerusalem will go forth a remnant, and out of the mount of Zion survivors. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will perform this. Now the reason the whole discussion about remnant is that Lachish, which I'm going to show you in a couple of minutes, a couple of pictures from it and video I took while I was there, they killed everyone. Like they killed every single person. And so you did not want to be conquered back then because it wasn't like you're under arrest. They would torture people badly. In fact, we went to Masada. The word Masada from the Bible. You know that psalm that says, the Lord is my rock and my fortress, a very present help in time of need. There was a 1970s praise chorus, right? He's my rock, he's my fortress, he's my deliverer, right? In him will I trust. Praise the name of Jesus. You know that song? That old song. Anyway, sorry, I'm not a singer. But so the word fortress is the word Masada. And it's this massive mountain on the Dead Sea that Herod the Great built an incredible palace on top of this thing. 70 AD, when the city of Jerusalem falls, 1,000 zealots flee to Masada. The Romans take 4 years to build a rampart, lose hundreds of people in the process because you could shoot down at them, build a ramp, because they were going to starve them out. But Masada is massive, has its own water source. You can grow crops there. I mean, it's unbelievable. This place is unbelievable. But here's the deal. There was 1,000 people, and we have records from this. 3 people survived. They hid out. They didn't do this. But they all agreed to mass suicide. They selected 10 men to kill all the people. And then those 10 were going to kill each other successively, one at a time. And one of the 10, they found the draw where they drew the names out, and the name of one of the 10 was the man that they know was the head of this group at Masada. And so historical evidence from that, they just recently found. Crazy. But so they all took, because they knew if the Romans got their hands on them, this would be horrific. And so the same thing with the Assyrians. They didn't take any prisoners. They just killed everyone violently. It was awful. And so this whole idea for Jerusalem is like, well, if they break the wall, it's not like, well, they'll just take us as prisoners. They were going to kill everyone. And they'd already done it at various places. And so this statement, for out of Jerusalem will go forth a remnant, was a big question because they had already heard what they did with Lachish. And Lachish, I'll show you the city, and you're like, ooh, that city fell? That's crazy. When we drove up on Lachish, in the bus, you're having to dip down enough to be able to see the top of it. I have no idea how they pulled this off. Well, having 185,000 people helps, just sheer numbers. And they also built a massive rampart up, which means they lost people while building it. But yeah, I'll show you in a second. But this whole idea for Jerusalem was like, well, Lachish fell, and Lachish was, I'll show you pictures, you're like a super fortified city. And the assumption is it could never fall. When it fell, the city and Jerusalem were like, ooh, this is not good. And then they dig Hezekiah's tunnel, remember that? Talked about that. Because they're trying to get water into the city from the Gihon Springs. So 33, therefore, thus says the Lord concerning the king of Israel, he will not come to the city or shoot an arrow there. He will not come up before it with shield or throw up a siege ramp against it. Well, that language fits perfectly with what happened at Lachish. They shot arrows. He will not come before it with the shield. They got on the ramp, the siege ramp they're building. They have their shields. You have shield bearers up there because people are throwing rocks from above and shooting arrows at them and things like that. They found a whole stack of perfectly rounded off rocks because the people up on the city of Lachish have slingshots and they're like King David slinging them down at these guys. And so you have people on the siege ramp with the shields. This language is all exactly what just happened at Lachish. And Lachish to Jerusalem, you can see Jerusalem from Lachish. So it's about 12 miles, I'm guessing. Maybe more, but anyway. All right, so by the way that they came, he will return. For I will defend the city, save it for my own and for my servant David's sake. Verse 36, and the angel of the Lord went out and struck 185,000 in the camp of the Assyrians. And when the men arose early in the morning, behold, all those were dead. So Sennacherib, king of Assyria, departed and returned home and lived at Nineveh. And then we're told, and this is true, we know this from Assyrian records, his sons killed him. And his other son took his place. So, all right, well, I know you've already heard a lot about Israel, and I apologize for that. You know, a few people have said, hey, you should take us on a tour. It's like, no. No, the archaeologist is literally reading ancient Hebrew right off the scripts and stuff like that. So I will say what's interesting about the guy is he is the Energizer Bunny. I mean, he's in his 70s, and keeping up with him was a disaster. I've never ached this much, and I was in really good shape. You guys know I got in crazy good shape headed into that December 26th physical exam. I was dying. Every night I'm like, oh, I'm so sore. That guy is a machine. So anyway, yeah. I knew when we were army crawling under barbed wire fences on that one trail, I was like, all right. He told this crazy story too about the Warren shaft, which goes down to the Gihon Spring. It's about a 50-foot shaft. And he goes, one night, me and my buddy and this Israelite archaeologist, we snuck into the place in the middle of the night. And with just candles in their mouth, we rappelled down into Warren shaft just to look around and rappelled back out. He has pictures of him and this Israeli, he was a young guy at the time, archaeologist, and himself and this other guy at Warren shaft at that time. That guy, the archaeologist, just recently died. But anyway, he's a famous archaeologist. He found some like really important things, but it's funny. So he did a lot of crazy stuff. Yeah. So pretty funny. All right. So, this is one other thing I haven't shown you yet, but this one was intriguing to me. This is the top of Azekah, A-Z-A-K-A. A-Z-E-K-A, Azekah, like Ezekiel, A-Z-E-K, Zeke, Azekah. And that area down below, you see there's kind of a mountain right in the middle, and then there's a mountain on the other side. There's a creek that runs through there. And we're told in the Bible that the Philistines were on one mountain range and the Israelites were on the other with the valley between them. And they were waiting here in that valley for a champion on the Israelite side to challenge Goliath, the champion from the Philistines. And David went to that brook. Israel used to jump rocks in the brook for tourists. They weren't even Israeli rocks. They got them from somewhere else, and they would bring them in. But after COVID, they stopped doing it. So, but we drove right over. We drove down that road. You see that road there? We drove right by where that battle took place, and right over the creek where it's like can I get one rock out of the creek bed? I bet I can find one. Pottery shard? Anyway, so they weren't stopping for me though. Anyway, so David kills Goliath there. And then it says they chased them to the something gate. Well, there's a tell just down that valley of an old ancient city by that name. So it fits perfectly with this location. Pretty insane stuff. This is why people are like, oh, it's just mythology. It's like, there's no way someone hundreds of years later is going to make up stories and name the valley perfectly, the terrain perfectly, the name of an old ancient city from that time period that was since destroyed and perfectly get it. Like, there's no way. So these things are based in historical events. So they're not making this up. So yeah. Anyway, so that's from Azekah. That's from the top there. There's actually an ancient Canaanite tell just behind me. If you were to turn around, there's an ancient Canaanite tell. It was destroyed probably around 1600 BC, probably by the Philistines, maybe 1500 BC. It's hard to know. If you turn the other way from this mountain, look the other way, the city of Gath is there. And so Gath is where Goliath was from. So Gath is 5 or 6 miles from this place. And if you look down this ridge the other way is the first Israeli city at that time period. They're literally living 12 miles apart from each other. And so they said, I'll tell you what, we'll meet there and we'll have it out. And so they did. And then King David kills Goliath, chops off his head with Goliath's sword. It says he killed him and then he killed him again. It's like, yeah, he was dead from the shot to the head, but David's like, no, I'm really going to kill him. So he chops his head off and then he takes his head to the city of Jerusalem and puts it on a pike outside the city of Jerusalem and says, you guys are next. And I think where he took it is the place of the skull. I think that's how it got its name. The place of the skull is not because the rock formation looks like a skull. I think it got its name is because it's where David intimidated the city of Jerusalem by putting the head of Goliath on a pike. And it would have been a great place for crucifixions later because the whole city could see it. That's why I think this is a great location for Goliath's head as you guys are next. But anyway, all right. It looks like the videos didn't load. Oh, yeah, they did. Okay. So this is, that is Lachish. So you can see, if you said, we're going to attack this city, you're going to have a hard time. I mean, that is, all right. So this hill here to the right is the, whoops, that was the whole video, wasn't it? My bad. All right. So this is, I don't know what's in this video. I hate to say it. You see the car way down below? I mean, like, this is a completely impenetrable fortified city. And if you've got about 20,000 people in this city, I don't care if you have 185,000, it's going to take a while to defeat you. Because to get up there, people are going to throw rocks at you and the like. So you see that wall there? That's the original wall from Lachish. They had two walls, this wall, and then up on top is a second wall. And so that's the original wall from Lachish. So there's a picture. Of course, I don't know why, this is kind of dumb, but why didn't the Assyrians just take that nice metal-handled concrete walkway up? That's what I would have done. All the siege ramp stuff, they could have just taken, it even has handholds and stuff. Why didn't they just take that? Man, Assyrians, just not smart with their invading at all. But let's see what this one is. Okay, there's the siege ramp. See that? That was, the Assyrians built that. That's the siege ramp up to the city. And so they have their shields and they got people shooting arrows at them and throwing rocks at them. And so the shield bearers are on the front, right? And that's what we saw in Isaiah. Again, this is biblical, historical material. What does God tell Isaiah to tell King Hezekiah? They won't build a siege ramp. They won't fire an arrow. They won't have shield bearers. And we know from the Assyrian record, okay, so this is crazy. This was found on the walls at Nimrod in Assyria. That's the siege ramp. You see him going up the siege ramp at Lachish. You see him shooting arrows. There's shield bearers in front of him. This is the Assyrian record of the fall of Lachish. And so the biblical record then says they're not going to do what they did there at Jerusalem. They're not going to build a siege ramp there. So is the Bible trustworthy? I'm just telling you, every time they turn a shovel over, you just go, all right. I mean, that's pretty accurate stuff, isn't it? And it's not just the Bible's claim that Sennacherib came, built a siege ramp, took arrows, bows and arrows, shooting into the city with guys holding shields as they built the siege ramp, eventually destroyed the city, kill everyone there. All of that is on the Assyrian record, on the wall of Nimrod. And it fits perfectly with Isaiah 37, where we're told this army from Assyria comes and does just this. All right, so if you're just curious whether the Bible's accurate or trustworthy, this is just example after example of this kind of thing, okay? So let's see, there's another picture from this battle. I don't know if you can even tell what's going on there. Oh, that's them getting to the top of the siege ramp. I think that's them with this battering ram, and they had these battering rams they would use. And then here at the end, they make all these people pay tribute to to Sennacherib, and then they kill them. It's really pleasant. It's like, show tribute, and then they run them through. All right, so, man, there was one of the, this is the prism of Sennacherib, where he says, they have I don't know if that's my picture of that from the Israeli Museum, which I don't think is the original. The original, which I also have pictures of, and this might also be my picture, but I don't remember, is at the British Museum. I think it may be my picture. But the only thing that's missing is one of my sons, because I always tortured them by making them stand next to really cool archaeological finds, even though they were 10 years old and they didn't care. So I don't know if I took this picture or not. I think I did, because I think I see my shadow reflection in it. Because if it was a professional, they would have done better with the glass. Yeah. Anyway, okay. So Sennacherib's prism says he came to the cities of Judah. He destroyed all these cities. He destroyed Lachish, as named on this prism, and that he bound up Hezekiah like a caged bird in Jerusalem. That's what it says. He never fired a shot, never built a siege ramp, never put shields up, exactly what the Bible says. And the best he could do to cover himself with his PR department is say, tell him we caged that Hezekiah up like a scared bird. Yeah, let's say that. And so that's Sennacherib's prism. That's what it says. This was found by French archaeologists around 1870s, something like that. It's in cuneiform. You can see the little cuneiform language there. And so, again, if you're looking for evidence that the Bible is accurate, this is some pretty strong archaeological evidence that the Bible is true. So there you have Sennacherib's own words. Now, I did not get to go through Hezekiah's tunnel. But here's the thing. So I showed in the service a brief video of the Canaanite tunnel that goes by it. So Hezekiah's tunnel is 6 football fields long. And so we go down to the entrance to us. They had it locked because they'd gotten flooded out and the water was really high, and they were also concerned about runoff of unhealthy things into the water. And so they wanted to test the water and things like that, and it was taking them a while. So they shut it down because we had massive rain. In fact, we had to change some of our plans because one of the roads flooded out and stuff like that. But we went down to the entrance gate. Whoa. Like I was in, like I would have done it, but the entrance to it is about 3 foot tall, and the water was at least 2 foot deep. And you had to basically kind of bend down and walk through it for about, 40 or 50 feet. Then you could stand up. But it is this tight, like you were basically your shoulders brushing the whole time for 600 yards. Yeah, it's 1,800 and something feet of walking through this tunnel. I was so in. I would have done it. But Kim is claustrophobic. Even the Canaanite tunnel was not, she was like, and that thing's massive compared to Hezekiah's tunnel. She's like, I would have been in the Canaanite tunnel anyway. You can take either one because they both start at the same place. She's like, I would have taken the Canaanite tunnel and then gotten out sooner and all that kind of stuff. But I didn't get to do it, and it's really disappointing because it comes out the Pool Siloam. I would have loved to have crawled through that. So future plans, we'll see, yeah. But it was one of my bucket list things I did not get to do. There were a few on my bucket list I did not get to do. That was one of them. But there were things I did not know were on my bucket list that I did that should have been on my bucket list. But yeah. But I got baptized in the Jordan River. Me and Kim did it together at the same time. That was kind of fun. And Not some huge spiritual significance to it for us. I've already been baptized, so it's she. But it was to us, it was really cool. Reprofess our faith in Christ. One lady in our group, though, got baptized for the first time. That was really cool. Now, only 9 of the 48 did it. You know why? Some theological reason, some spiritual reason. No, it was about 50 degrees. Yeah. And bone-chilling cold. And so a lot of people were like, it was cold, just ambient temperature. They're like, there's no way I'm getting in that water. I was like, yeah, it'll be cold for 10 minutes, but you get the experience. So I was like, we'll do it. It'd be like getting in Joe Pool Lake, maybe Friday, not today, but yeah. Well, anyway, here's Hezekiah's tunnel. There's what it looks like when you walk through there. Yeah, you have to be cool with confined spaces. All right. Now, the one more thing I wanted to get back to. So the archaeologists said things that I didn't always agree with, and which was cool, because in the world of archaeology, there's lots of people arguing and disagreeing about all kinds of stuff. But one of the things he said, and I thought a lot about this, he said the word 1,000 is sometimes used of a group of people, not of a literal 1,000 people. So like an army troop. So 185,000 might have been 185 sets of troops. So it might not have been a literal 185. And there's a few examples of this in the Bible, okay? It might not have been a literal 185,000. It still was going to be a ton of people, but he was like, there's some examples of this where it's not always means 1,000. Sometimes it means like a platoon kind of thing, or it could be several hundred people in a platoon. So 185,000 may have been more like 20,000, but with platoons, instead of literally meaning 1,000, meaning count them, more like groups. That someone went out and counted the groups, not the individual noses. They didn't count noses. They went, how many of their groups are camped around us, kind of thing. Still a formidable force, clearly, given he destroyed every single city in Judah. But I still think it's the 185,000 literal. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's the only place it occurs is that one verse, so it's hard to know. And 185,000, that would be hard to count. 185 groups, platoons, that'd be easier to count. So it could be. Plus, at Lachish, as hard as it would be to defeat, 185,000 people around the base of Lachish, I don't know what they would eat or where they would be. That's a big number. So if it's more like, 20,000 people, I could see that. It still would be big enough to defeat Lachish if it's 20,000 really gifted soldiers. Going against a 20,000 person village that has farmers, children, elderly, that kind of thing. You have 3,000 or 4,000 people that can maybe throw rocks and shoot arrows, and your supply line's cut off. So 20,000 really gifted soldiers could probably still take that city pretty easily, and probably could have taken Jerusalem as well. So anyway, so we had that discussion a little bit. So I was like, all right, I got to do some more research on that. But anyway, so that was one thing that came up at Lachish. Do you have any questions? Want to go to Israel? Yeah.
I've been wanting to go to Israel for quite a while, and I'm trying to get friends to go with me, and nobody seems to want to buy in right now because of safety issues. What was security like there?
I was never nervous about safety. So Kim accidentally left her cell phone on the transport van. So it's in Israel. We know where it is. I mean, the tour company has it. So we landed at JFK. We went to a T-Mobile store a mile from our hotel. I did not once feel nervous in Israel. I was scared to death at that T-Mobile store. Now, here's the thing. The lady at the T-Mobile store, it got great reviews. That's why we went there. She was unbelievable. Young lady, working on her master's degree, probably like 22 years old. She helped us out. She was great. Kind of got her a new phone. I was getting Kim a new phone anyway. She had an iPhone 13. It was kind of old. It's using the old charging plug. So it's hard because we're constantly, mine's a 15. So we're always like, this charging plug doesn't work with hers. So now we're on the same charging plug, all those kinds. I was going to get her a new phone anyway. That wasn't the conditions I wanted to do it under. So we randomly went there. I never once felt nervous in Israel. I was scared of New York. So, yeah. Yeah. Because we asked the lady, our hotel's like maybe a mile from here. We took an Uber there. Could we just walk? She goes, no. She's like, no, it's not safe to walk and it's through here. Of course not. So I was like, all right, never mind. So I felt safer in Israel than I did in New York. Yeah. Now, the kind of tour you take will depend on what you're looking to do. If you're not into archaeology and you don't want to walk 1 billion miles and you want to go to more of the traditional tourist sites, this is not the tour. I would probably do one for Israel. If you're an evangelical Christian, they do a tour every year in November. They go to worship services with some of the churches, evangelical churches there too. So you could worship with other believers while you're there, which is really cool idea. We were thinking about that, but because of my background with church history and archaeology and things like that, I want to do something more technical. And I did research using AI, and this guy was the first guy that came up, highest reviewed technical archaeological person. But you got to be willing to walk a ton. There were people on our trip who I think got overwhelmed pretty quickly. So, like we climbed Masada, and then we came back to the Herodian, which Herod the Great built, which shadows over the city of Bethlehem. You can see Bethlehem from the top of the Herodian. This thing's unbelievable. I don't know how he built this. You know what he told them? He went to the side, he goes, I want to build a palace here. And he told the architect, he goes, you got to make it 50 feet taller because I need to be able to see Jerusalem from here. So they raised the hill 50 feet and then built the palace on top of that. It is spectacular. Yeah, I mean, it is one of the coolest places we went to. And then and he was buried there. And they just found his tomb in 2010. They just discovered his tomb there. And the tomb of Herod the Great is now at the Israeli Museum. So they found him. They found Herod the Great. They found him at the Herodium. He died in Jericho, but they brought him to the Herodium to be buried. And it took them a while to find it because he wanted them to destroy the Herodian after they buried him so no one could get to him and desecrate his body. And so it took them a long time to find it because they destroyed access to the location where he was buried. They buried him and then broke down the access to it as they came out. That's why it was still there 2,000 years later. So that was pretty cool. But we did the Masada and the Herodian the same day. My phone says I climbed 72 flights of stairs that day. And so if you go, hey, yeah, let's go with Dr. Delancey. That'll be a nice, fun trip. It's like, yeah, if you're ready to walk 15,000 steps every day or more and climb a lot. If you don't, I would say do something like one for Israel. They have a rule. It's really more Christian oriented than less archaeological. And that would be a good tour too. If I would design one, I would do a little bit more church history. Because there's a church at Nain where the widow at Nain's son was raised. They built a church there. We didn't go to the Church of the Annunciation in Nazareth. He's like, there it is. I'm like, why are we not going to? He's like, traffic's terrible over there. I'm like, oh, come on. Traffic's terrible in DFW too when I go places. And then the church, we didn't go to the Church of Ascension. When we got to the church, this was kind of a weird thing. We go to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, right? He's like, we're not waiting in line to see the tomb. And he goes, and the historical crucifixion site's up those stairs, but we're not going up there. So then they left, they picked up the bus. I told Kim, I said, I can get us back to the hotel from here. I've got the map of Jerusalem, I think, down. She's like, you've been here one day? I was like, I think geometrically. And so I said, I can get us home. So we wait in line for an hour to see the empty tomb. I was like, this is it for us. Archaeological dig at Arad, like, okay, it's named in the Bible once. We spent 3 hours in a pouring rainstorm there. And you're telling me we're not going to wait an hour to see the empty tomb? You've lost your ever-loving mind. So we waited. Everyone else left. Next day, about 8 other people went back there because they talked to us about it. They're like, wait, you did what? And we showed them pictures. They went, that's in that church? We're like, yeah. They went back. They walked back to that church so they could see it. It's about a mile and a half walk from the hotel. And yeah, that was 100% worth doing. So stuff like that where the archaeologists are like, we worship the person, not the place. I'm like, yeah, but millions of people have come here and put their hands on that rock as the defining place of their faith, that tomb is empty. I'm waiting an hour to see that. I told Kim, I said, how long would we wait at Disneyland to get on a ride? It's like, I'd wait an hour to get on a Six Flags roller coaster. You're telling me we're not going to wait an hour to see the place where they laid Jesus' body and he rose again from the dead? You're out of your ever-loving mind. I'm waiting. And then we get up to the cross and no one's up there. It's unbelievable. I was like, are you kidding me? This is the most important thing in all of Christendom. This is it. This is the place. And historically, it's probably the right place. So I was like, nah, we're going to see it. So, hey, Robert, actually, can you end this proclaim and open the Sunday morning snow? So I think I named it Snow Sunday. Because I don't think I showed you all the pictures of the burial or the crucifixion site. I'll show it to you real quickly. And it's not like we have a ton of transition between services here. There's like 10 people here. And that's crazy that you guys were brave enough to show up. 10, this is triple the number I was expecting. So I thought it was going to be like COVID when I taught every day, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and no one was in the room. And so Jeff put up little poster cutouts of people and put them in the crowd, including Yoda, or Yiddle, baby Yoda, which was kind of weird, you know. Though there's probably some people at church that look a little bit alike like him. But all right, let's see. So I'll just show you this real quickly. I know we're out of time. So this is the place of the historical location of the crucifixion of Jesus. You see that person is kneeling. I have a close-up picture of the spot, but there's a hole, and around the hole there's a ceramic inscription thing like this, and it's supposedly the hole where the cross went. But you see the two glass on either side? In fact, one of them's cracked. The glass on the left was cracked. They're going to have to replace it. But it looks down into the rock quarry that was elevated over the Roman road just outside the city gate. This is 600 yards from Herod's palace where Pontius Pilate would have been. Jesus walked about 600 yards carrying his own cross to this location. And the two thieves were crucified in the rock quarry next to him on either side. That's why they left those two things open with the glass so you can see the rock quarry underneath. This would have been an elevated spot just above the road where you could easily see them, but not so high that you couldn't mock them, which is what they were looking for. That's what the Romans wanted. High enough to let everyone see, low enough to make you be able to walk by and wag your tongue at them, which is what happened with Jesus. And so that is the historical place where Jesus was supposedly crucified. Do I know it's the exact spot? I don't, but this church history stuff from 130 AD is when this was identified before 130 AD. So it's not like someone in the Crusader time period, 1200 went, oh, this is the spot. There's some of those, like the birthplace of Mary is supposedly identified by the Crusaders in 1200 AD. I'm highly cynical that Mary was born in Jerusalem. She was from Galilee. What in the world? So the Church of St. Anne. It is not the birthplace of Mary. It has nothing to do with St. Anne. I don't think she ever lived there, whatever. Coolest church you can sing in, though. Man, the echo effect in that room was spectacular. Yeah, I'd still visit. Again, I'm a church historian, so you walk, if you come in the doors of the Holy Sepulchre, you go up the stairs, and this is up the stairs. They left the rock quarry into the building of the church. You go up the stairs, and this unbelievably ornate, again, I'm a church historian. The ceilings are all painted. The walls are all painted. Just stunning with Latin phrases everywhere. It's like just mind-blowing how beautiful this place is. I took probably 20 pictures just in this one place. I got one picture, like I said, right up on top of it. A little kid is in there. He went in just to touch the spot. So he was in it. I could never get it by itself. But anyway, so from up those stairs, you go down the stairs back to the main level, and you go about 100 yards inside the church still, and you come to this structure here, and this is the tomb. And so you have to wait in line. We waited in line about an hour. It was longer than normal because they had mass happen while we were there. 6 different denominations / groups all share this building, and they do a mass once a day, every one of them. And so we were there while mass is going on, they shut the line down. And so hardly anyone does the mass, but you get to hear them sing, which is really cool because the echo effect in that building's unbelievable. So it's kind of pretty to listen to them sing. And then, so you finally get to go in. They send you in 4 at a time. You cannot take pictures. You go in 4 at a time. There's a rock when you first come in that door. There's a rock on a pedestal. And people who are a little bit more liturgical, maybe Catholic, they'll all touch it and pray. It's supposedly the rock where the angels were seated when Mary first came, okay? When Mary Magdalene came, right? He is not here, he's risen. The angel tells him. And then you walk past that rock about another, like from here to the chairs, and there's you go in, and then you turn, and there's a concrete slab that I think they had to put something over it because so many people came in and touched it. And so they kind of marbleized it. I don't know what the surface is. It's kind of a brown but smooth, like marbleized surface that they put over it. Because I think the old one, they touched it so many times, it's starting to wear the concrete out, or the original rock slab out. And so I will tell you, so the four of us go in. There was these two ladies. They went in first, and then they left, and there's just me and Kim. And for just a second, I paused. I put my hand on that cold rock surface and just went, this is the place, fam. It was really cool. So for me, this was really meaningful. And like I said, the archaeologist is like, yeah, that's supposedly that's the tomb of Jesus. And this is after he did a 45-minute lecture on, historically, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre probably is the right spot. And then he's like, we're not waiting in line for this. And so I was like, well, yeah, we are. And Kim and I were like, if we miss dinner, Kim was the first one to look at me and said, what? I said, yeah, we're waiting. She goes, yeah, we'll wait. She goes, can we find our way back to the hotel? I said, I got it. So, we came out of there, went through this little archway, and then there's a road, street name on it. It's like, that's the street I remember. And the reason I remembered it was there's a shopping hallway that you go through to get down to the Temple Mount. And that road empties at the following shop. Roll Tide, Alabama Crimson Tide store. Who wouldn't remember this? She goes, what are we looking for? I said, Alabama Crimson Tide. She's like, you're kidding. I went, nope. We came out. It's like, there it is right there. She goes, which way do we go, left or right? I go, we went by Alabama Crimson Tide on the way to the Wailing Wall. We're going to go back away from it to go to the hotel. And she's like, all right, you remember where to go from there? It's like, I got it. So anyway, found our way back pretty easily. And I was like, it was well worth, I would have, just saying, for me, it was worth it. So, all right. Well, you guys are amazing. Sorry for all the Israel talk today. I got it out of my system, though. I think I'm good now. I won't bring it up ever again, I'm sure. I mean, other than next week. Because I did not get to show you pictures from the Arbel or from the historical side of the Sermon on the Mount. There's a church there at the Sermon on the Mount location we didn't get to go into, which that's on my bucket list to go back for. I'd like to go back to see that church. Greek Orthodox church built originally around 500, but rebuilt around 1200 during the Crusader time period. And so I want to go see that church. And it's the same architect designed it as a couple other churches in the area. I want to go see it. Yeah. I showed you guys pictures of the church, brand new church at Magdala. They just found in 2009, they're putting a hotel in. They find the synagogue from Magdala. You know Magdala? Mary Magdalene. That's her hometown. It's just about 2 miles from Capernaum. And so they find that. But they built a Catholic church there. And the church has all glass and looks out over the Sea of Galilee. And they made their pulpit is a boat. It's a boat. And if you sit down in the church, the boat's on the Sea of Galilee. Because of the horizon thing. And like if you're standing, you won't see the effect. But if you sit down, the boat's floating on the Sea of Galilee. And remember the story? Jesus taught from the boat on the Sea of Galilee. It's a reenactment of that. Every Sunday they preach from the boat on the Sea of Galilee. You say, well, we could do that at Matthew Road. Well, Joe Pool Lake's a long, I don't know how we would, yeah, not the same. Yeah, because the Sea of Galilee is about 30 feet beyond the glass window of that church. And so they teach from the boat on the Sea of Galilee. It's really cool. Yeah, that building's amazing. The priest and the nun that was there, the lady, sweetest people you'd ever meet. So encouraging, Christ exalting, Christ centered. She prayed over people if they'd come with burdens or wanted to be healed. She goes, I don't have the power, Jesus does. A lot of people have come here and have experienced God's grace here, both emotionally, spiritually, and even a few of them physically. One of the most encouraging things we went through the whole trip. Yeah. Sweetest lady, just so sweet. Anyway, all right, we're past time. Get out of here. Love you guys.